It's the Waiting for Next Year.com podcast. Somebody who I think kind of tricked the media establishment into thinking he was a sports writer, but he's really just like a writer. Martin Rickman.
Is that really what we're going to go with now? Because if that's the case, then I finally did my job.
Yeah, because I mean, we're going to start off talking about Ludacris and Chvrches, and you went to Uproxx under the idea that you were going to write about sports, though, I'm pretty sure.
There was a lot of that, but I mean, we had discussions all along. I mean, a big part of why the opportunity was so exciting for me was because they did have so many other things going on. And, you know, when I talked to Brett, who's really, really good at seeing big picture and helping kind of establish a vision, but not have it be, you know, this pie in the sky vision of things that you can't accomplish. You know, he's very realistic and tells you what you can and can't do. But if you have a good reason to do something or you have an opportunity, he's not someone who divides up the pie based on who's supposed to be doing something. If something comes up for you, you can take it as long as you do a good job with it and you're professional. And I've been getting some opportunities and kind of tracking down stories, whether through PR channels or people I know or reaching out to other people, or I've got this idea and it's something I really want to do and an editor signs off on it. So nobody's really said no to anything as long as you're able to make it happen and you do a good job with it. And that was what was so exciting about it was my first opportunity to kind of start pushing more into culture and pop writing rather than just sports, because it's always been something I've wanted to do. I just haven't really had the opportunity to do it before, and kind of started out when I got there, what are ways I can kind of make music seem like sports? And so that was why I interviewed Bubba Sparks a while back, because I wanted to talk to him about Madden soundtracks. And then it's really developed into, okay, well, why not just write a feature on a band if I have a good relationship with my music editor and we can make the interviews happen? And it's been really fun to do that, to supplement the sports coverage, because obviously I need to be doing that and that's my responsibility. But to really merge styles and find some other avenues to really just develop my voice and take some shots and take some chances and risks, because this whole year for me has been wanting to do things I've never done before and really try harder to develop that voice and to take chances. So
well, it's great, because that's exactly what a media company should want to do as well. And most recently, you know, on the site, and we're also going to talk about a long feature that you did on the band Chvrches, because they've got a new album coming out. But you did a Q&A with Ludacris, and I hope I'm not going to embarrass you, but by accident, I found a tweet from December 15th, 2013 that happened to be a goofy tweet that you sent at Ludacris, which happened to be your first question in the Q&A 2 years later.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that for a very long time. My friends and I love that video. And
well, tell everybody what the question was, because I should.
The question was, you know, did he get to keep the arms from the Get Back video? Because it's probably my favorite music video of all time.
They're these cartoonish, like gigantic Popeye, but Popeye times 25.
Yeah, and he just waves them around and then uses them to choke a guy, and he punches a mailbox and does all these crazy things.
But the video opens with him putting those cartoonish hands above his head while he's standing at a urinal. And
it's just so funny, man.
So you got to ask Ludacris about the arms, which I thought was so great, because he's out there promoting Fast and Furious 7, and you asked him about that stuff too. But you know, it's a Q&A, and it's a fun read. But that first question just cracked me up.
Yeah, and it was really, you know, this was one of those weird opportunities that I had, and I had the chance to interview Jordan Brewster last week, also as part of the Furious 7, you know, marketing that they had going on. And I was supposed to get Luda, you know, one-on-one for 10, 15 minutes. And they said it wasn't going to happen, and I kind of pushed for it because I wanted it to happen. And what they were able to do was through proxy, through an intern, really, all my questions got asked, but I didn't get to ask the follow-up. So I wanted to make sure I asked as varied of questions as I could and really get those in there. And then they sent me the audio. So it was basically like an iPad asked my questions, but it was a human being, and that was cool. I just wish that I was the one that got to ask them to him, because I would have used my own voice in there to ask some questions to him follow-up wise. And that's pretty much my favorite part of these interviews, is taking something that someone else says and then, trying to find more of a conversation to it and less of just, an interview. You said this, okay, this is another question I want to ask. This is another question I want to ask. And letting that kind of take on a life of its own. And that's something over the last year or two I've noticed I've gotten better about. And, we've talked about this before with just how important interviews are, and really just establishing a relationship and, rapport with your subject, coming in with your homework done so you know as much about them as you possibly can, because they recognize whether you have an agenda coming in or whether you're not as informed as you should be. And we've all heard those radio interviews where someone doesn't even know who they're talking to or hasn't read the book that the person it's coming on the show to get 15 minutes of their time, is promoting. So it makes a difference. And I've noticed that it really has for me. Not that I used to come into interviews uninformed, but really just taking that extra 10% of an effort to do a better job with it.
Yeah. And it's kind of intimidating, because even I recently had Lou Holtz on the podcast, and that was via Skype, and everybody knows Lou Holtz. So, and it's not like he's a commentator now. So it's not like he's got a movie coming out that I could watch, or a book that he just released that I could read. And so it was very difficult to prepare, so to speak, for that, because everybody knows the guy. I've known the guy, but what road am I going to take here? And it was real quick. It wasn't like a big deal, but, so did you extra watch Furious 7? Because I assume you saw it once already.
Yeah, I've actually been going through all of them recently. So I'm watching 1 through 6, and then I watched 7 last week, and I rewatched a bunch of Luda videos in anticipation of this, and also solicited questions from my friends, which is a thing that when I got to Uproxx, I told myself, I'm going to try to write more stories for my friends, so that they would be stories that my friends and I would share with each other. And we'd say, did you see that Luda interview? Or did you see that video? Or did you see this? And then it'd be something we text each other. Because we always, throughout the day, I've got 6 or 7 group texts. I've got group me's open. I'm G-chatting people. What are the links that I would be sending to my friends? And hope that I'm writing some of those. And the Luda one was, it was exactly that. I've always wanted to interview him. I hope I get to interview him for real and not just have my questions be answered by him and have an audio track of it, because this is one of the more interesting characters in music for me, because of how he's been able to cross over and bounce between genres and, really just do things that seem interesting to him. And, he didn't have like the traditional music background. He DJ'd and, then ended up on a radio station, and then ended up rapping and kept moving. And then now he's doing movies, and he's in one of the more successful franchises, ever. And so asking my friends, what would you want Ludacris to answer? If you had one question you wanted to ask him, what would it be? And the more of these, I doubt I get situations like this all the time where it's these people that are on my dream list of interviews. But if I do, I'm definitely going to ask my friends, because they're the ones reading it, right? And if they're getting the questions that they want answered, chances are that's something other people reading it have wanted to know the answer to as well.
It's also interesting because, I grew up, not grew up, but I listened to Ludacris, when I was younger, here and there. And then of course he becomes an actor. And then my memories of him most recently were kind of back in 2008, when he was promoting Max Payne of all movies. But, back in those days he was on Opie and Anthony, and it turned into like a kind of a small controversy, because he came in with an attitude. He didn't want to go by the name Ludacris. But now here we are, 7 years later, and apparently he's getting the kind of advice, or he's decided that, look, I can't deny that I'm Ludacris. I'm just going to go by Ludacris. But there was like a moment where he was trying to be the serious actor and he wanted to be taken seriously, which I get. But he wanted to go by Christopher Bridges and not Ludacris. And it caused some tension when he was out doing promotions, which is the exact opposite of what you want when you're out doing promoting. Although I don't think that would have saved Max Payne. But, that's more on Mark Wahlberg, right?
It's like that thing with The Rock, though. Does The Rock go by Dwayne Johnson or does he go by The Rock? I think you got to be okay with both at this point. Like, nobody's ever going to call him Chris Bridges. Yeah, you've got Chris in your rapping name. That's cool, at least. At least he's Ludacris. Just go by that. It's fine. It's part of your identity. It's like anything else. People are known by their Twitter handles now, and that's just something you've got to be fine with. Like,
and as long as it's not
interchangeable,
as long as it's not like a used, it's not, if somebody starts calling Pauly Shore Encino Man, like that's you're like making fun of a guy. But nobody's making fun of Christopher Bridges when they call him Luda.
No, but I would love calling Pauly Shore Encino Man. That'd be fun. Or at least call Brendan Fraser that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you call Pauly Shore that or Brendan Fraser? Okay, and so before we get to sports, and we will get to sports, everybody, I promise. But so you've got, by the time this is out, people will be able to read your long feature on Chvrches with a V, which is a band. I can't remember where they're from. Are they a Scandinavian band?
They are from Glasgow, Scotland.
Glasgow, Scotland. Okay, so they're not Scandinavian. But just talk about exploding onto the scene. I compare them to Roxette, and not in like a nasty way, because I liked Roxette, but like they make really great music.
Yeah, it's really great pop music, and they don't shy away from that. Something that I didn't even get into the piece, and I'm going to try to find it now because I liked the quote so much. They have a person in their band named Martin, so that's always fun for me. It's the first time I think I've ever interviewed another Martin before. So that's another like life goal that ended up happening.
But I'm trying to think if I've ever interviewed anybody named Craig. I don't think I have. But anyway.
But in this album, they really wanted to do more Quincy Jones style production. So you could tell in the first one, like they would add all these extra synth flourishes and really try to like layer this so deeply with all of the electronic stuff that they put in there. And this one, like obviously a lot of that's still there because that's their sound. And they talked a lot, about making music for their fans and not shying away from their fans and not alienating their fans. And in this one, it seems like they were trying to take more elements of that and try to simplify it a little bit. And Martin had said, like, with the Quincy Jones stuff, it was about like really getting a lean production, but still having a huge sound. That being said, you can make a good pop song where you have a second level of depth. So he said it's the writing beyond the sunshine cookie cutter pop angle that you can put music on the radio that has a deeper emotional content or more sophisticated production ideals. And so, I've always I like that about their first album as well. Like Lauren's lyrics, they're not overly emo, but they do have a little bit of depth to them. And when you contrast what she was singing about, especially on the first album, second one seems like they're more confident in general as a band, and they're really like making a statement about, basically saying like, screw the haters, kind of, whether those haters are an ex-boyfriend, whether those haters are the critics, whether they're internet commenters, you can kind of take it however you want it, but that they're still making these really good pop tracks that have a little bit of depth to them. They have a second layer under the surface. And so you get a danceable song that isn't completely disposable. And I like that about them. Like, cause I'm not trying to only listen to songs that are technically perfect or songs that, have amazing lyrics or get a 9.6 on Pitchfork. Like I like pop music a lot. And like, it's the same reason I can enjoy a Taylor Swift song for what it is, but finding a way to kind of bridge that gap between still having my indie cred, but liking a song where I can bounce around my house while I'm doing dishes. Like, that's really important to me. And I think that strikes a chord with me. It's why I kind of appreciate Chvrches as much as I do.
Well, and I have kind of my own story with Chvrches, because I kind of dismissed them a little bit when the first couple singles came out, or not singles, but the first couple big songs came out, and a lot of people I know whose musical opinions I respect really liked it, and I thought it was quality, but I didn't love it until Recover came out. And then once I heard Recover and I really gave it a listen, that was my gateway back into really enjoying the rest of the pop stuff. And that's really speaks to them and kind of their diversity as a band, because they not only cover the waterfront of the pop, which they do really, really well, but that wasn't, that's not really necessarily why I listen to music. I'm more of a melodramatic emo kid. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with, that's not a judgment of the bands that make whatever music they make. That's just my taste preference. But, that Chvrches is a deep enough band that they had a song that was a gateway to bring me in, so that I'm in for all of it now. And that's so great to me, that you could have a band that kind of covers the sheen of pop, but also has the depth to maintain that indie cred, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, indie cred. It's almost like complimenting myself or something, which is really not what I'm trying to do. But they're a cool band. That's really all you have to say, I guess.
And you work on these stories, right? And you have a preconceived notion of how a person or a group of people are going to be, and then you talk to them and you either confirm that, or you come up with another impression of it. And with them, it's hard for me. I like their music, obviously, but I like a lot of music. But what came through when I talked to all of them was they're really honest, but they're also really, really kind people. And it's hard not to root for those, because that's kind of what I'm trying to be as a human myself, and trying to grow and get better and be nicer to everyone, but be more honest to myself and be nicer to myself. So I think seeing what they were able to say about, their journey over the past 2 years, where they aren't really necessarily listening as much to the criticism that other people are having, where before they would have thought more about it. They're more confident, they're more self-assured. And it's neat seeing, a band admit that as part of their journey, and then kind of see the music reflect that, because you can never really separate yourself from your art, whether it's music or writing or sculpture, and being kind of exposed to that and peeking behind the curtain a little bit about it, and having people be as upfront and direct about it with me as I'm undergoing, this year of personal transformation that I've been going through, that I've been very upfront and honest about as I've been going through it, was really neat for me to kind of see those parallels.
All right, last but not least, and this it might actually be a much longer conversation than what we've had so far, but give me to the nuts and bolts. I mean, obviously, you had some access to the band, you had the source, the material that they're releasing. Talk to me about how the opportunity came up, how you approached it, what just the nuts and bolts, from point A to point Z, where you turned over the final edit, and negotiating between having the interview stuff and the actual art and putting it all together.
Yeah, this one was really interesting. It was a different type of story than I usually do, because it started out, we were just going to have a Q&A with Ian from Pitchfork. I was only able to get him that day, right, the day they were doing the festival. And I met with the band as a whole before everyone kind of broke off and did their thing. And the few minutes that I got with the whole band went really, really well, even if it wasn't direct interviews at that point. And then I broke off with Ian, and it was a very good 20 to 25 minute conversation. It wasn't an interview. It wasn't a press junket. I got a lot of really good information out of him, and he told me afterward that he appreciated that I did my homework, that he said a lot of people interview him and they don't ask good questions, and he noticed. And they're an interesting band in that regard, because Lauren is a former journalist. She went to journalism school, and she knows what it's like. She's been the one asking the questions before. So they're really media savvy as a band. And I guess a lot of bands are now because it's 2015 and you have to be.
Yeah.
But watching them do that and kind of knowing what good questions are and what are bad questions and what you want to get out of something, knowing what a soundbite is supposed to be, controlling their own social media channels and not having anyone else do it. All those things are something that I noticed about them throughout this process. But so instead, after that, I thought it went really well and wanted to blow out a bigger feature. So we had spoken with their publicist and decided not to run the Q&A and run the full interview like we normally would have. And they did end up getting me the rest of the band later on down the road. And we thought, okay, well, instead of just running this separately and having would have been a nice interview and would have looked like a lot of the other ones that you've seen about the band, kind of as they were going through the summer. I just wanted to see what I could do with extra information. But because I was kind of bridging the gap between seeing them live, so I had the concert, I had the music, I had the direct one-on-one and the personal interaction that I had with them, and then I had my interviews later with the rest of the band. It was really more difficult than it usually is for me trying to scene set, put people in the moment and still get that personal touch out of it, even though I was bridging really two time periods, which was, the beginning of July and then also the end of August, when I finished my interviews. So I was trying to kind of keep that momentum going throughout the piece. And I don't know if I was successful or not, but it was an approach that was different from one that I usually take.
Well, and it is something that's different, especially, coming from kind of a blogger background or whatever, and then by the time you expand it and you're writing it, and I just never, it's early on when I started writing and doing this kind of stuff, and obviously I'm not doing features like you're doing, but it never occurred to me that, oh yeah, you could work for 2 months on a piece and you'd have to reread it and perfect every sentence. It was always, to me, writing was about timeliness and getting it out there and like it's like it's a totally different thing. And so I'm always interested to hear the details, about how you kind of navigate that path, and because for you it is a departure from not a departure, but I mean it is a different a different thing.
Yeah, it's a totally different beat. And I think what's been most eye-opening, and this is terrible advice because it's not advice at all, is that all of these things are different. And you can't just put like one lens onto all of your stories or say like, I write this way and then this is my process, and try to fit or shoehorn all of that into everything you do. You got to be adaptable and try new things, even if they maybe don't work. And I've done a lot of stuff that hasn't worked, but it maybe has gotten me closer to something else that I can then do later. That was what was funny about one of the things, like Ludacris had said in the interview. I couldn't stop thinking about the like coveralls he was wearing in Too Fast, Too Furious, because he wears them like the entire movie. So I wanted to know if he ever regretted wearing any of the things he's worn, because he's worn some weird stuff over the years. Like nobody maybe was more like in the fashion moment other than Missy Elliott probably, with, oh gosh, yes, that's from 1999, or that's definitely a 2004 wardrobe. And he said he doesn't regret any of the things that he wore, because even if they were maybe a mistake, they led him to wearing something else that then made him, and he used the words fashion forward or fashion evolving or something. But like, I liked that, you're not making a mistake if you learn from it. Then it's just an experience, because you then found something else that you were able to do. And that's what it was with this. I wanted to try something different because I knew I had to, because it was a departure, like you were saying, from what I'm usually doing and how I usually write. And feature writing is new for me, and it's really the last couple years where I've started doing it. There's no like right or wrong approach. Like, do you start in the moment? Do you write from the past? Do you grab something that happened 3 years ago? It's just about kind of trial and error and figuring out what feels right. Like with the McConaughey story, I used a scene that I wasn't even involved with, but that I had 3 different people's accounts of, so I was able to pull it together because the 3 people who were there all gave me enough detail and there were enough overlapping things that I felt like I could tell the story like I was there. So I went with that. I've never written that way before. I've never done a feature where I set a scene with a place and time in which I wasn't present. And
it's really cool though to hear Ludacris talk about that, just in terms of fashion. And that's something that I've noticed about myself as I've gotten older, is that I'm getting better about letting myself off the hook for things that I did in the past. I used to live kind of embarrassed in potential embarrassment of my own archives. Like somehow I was going to be ashamed of it or whatever else. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten better about letting myself off the hook and not punishing myself in my own mind, because that does keep you from doing new things. Why should I try something new if I'm just going to feel bad about it 10 years down the road? You can't live your life like that. And I think I lived a lot of my 20s like that.
Yeah, regretting something you did. No, don't do that. You obviously did what you did for a reason, and yeah, you can shake your head, and you have to be able to laugh at yourself.
Unless I killed somebody.
Yeah, don't commit crimes that are above petty crimes. then you can be a little bit contrite about it. But yeah, that's been so much of, you don't learn that when you think that everything's so important. Every decision you make is the most important decision you're ever going to make, and that's why I think so much of what we wrote in our early 20s, mid 20s is so overwrought, because you want to make these grandiose statements instead of saying, I don't know about this, or I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm not informed enough to make this decision. You just have to admit that sometimes. And I letting go of that has been really hard, especially today, where you've got to make the declarative statement or write the definitive feature, or it gets buried. And just write for you and write for your friends and hope that that's enough. I'm not out here proclaiming myself to be anything. I still just feel like I'm really lucky to be writing on the internet and to be sharing my words with anyone. I think that there are days where I wake up and I'm stunned that that's still the case.
Yeah. Well, and so on to sports. And your new creations. You did start the college football podcast, It Me College Football, which I know it's funny, but I don't know why exactly that's funny as a title. So tell everybody, why did you do that title?
Oh gosh, we're getting way into deep internet here. It's a Twitter thing. I can't remember exactly who started it, so I don't want to give credit to the wrong person. Sure. And then it's, end up hurting someone else's feelings there. But somewhere on the internet, on weird Twitter, the joke had started that there was Papa John, and there were these pictures of Papa John, and someone started saying, "It me, Papa John, eat my pizza." And that phrasing kind of took off a little bit. So it would either be still more Papa John related, just it me, someone else, or if there was a joke about 400-pound man gets hand stuck trying to grab gator out of drain pipe, someone would just retweet that and just write it me. And so it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And, there's a Twitter account, Tro Ballins, who I think he's brilliant because he's always kind of navigating the line between, just how ridiculous the internet is and how quickly Twitter moves, and how we attach this gravity for the news cycle with content aggregation for these 24 hours. So he'll still bring up Cecil the Lion, and he decided that he was Pizza Rat, and he's still making these jokes about Ahmed's clock. And he kind of weaves all of the internet isms and this culture that goes on in a way that's just brilliant to me, and I'm obsessed with it. And so shout out Tro Ballins. But for college football and how weird college football is, it just seemed like we were joking around about what we should name the podcast. And I just was laughing with Robbie when he was, sitting right next to me. I'm like, why not just call it Me College Football? And we didn't have a better name, so that was it.
When it's so hard to name these things because you don't want to get to like, if you pretend it's too authoritative, then like people will think you're not allowed to have fun. And so it really is, naming anything sucks. I hated trying to come up with names for bands, growing up. Do you want to be like the ultra serious band? Do you go with the misspelling? And then beyond that, when I started as a songwriter, like writing song titles, like not even writing lyrics weren't a problem, but then to give it a title at the end, it just felt like, I feel like I'm going to step on a landmine no matter what I do. So naming anything is hard.
Yeah. And I feel like I should be better at it because it was actually a big part of my job for so long when I worked in advertising. But even that, like, you've got to sit through a meeting like that to understand just how hard naming really is. Like, it is not easy. We would write on Post-it notes and put them all on the wall. 500 names associated with trying to name a product. Go through all these different lines and tracks to try to go down that road. Like, what are some themes that we can pull out? What is the product? What does it do? What are some words or feelings associated with what this product is going to do, or with things that are even just tangentially related? And then just throw colors in there, throw some animals in there. It's not easy, and you always end up doing something different than what you thought you did. So I think because we have to move so fast, like headlines have to be written in seconds. But when you're making something that you're going to do like 20 times, like this podcast is going to be every week of college football season, that 10 seconds we spent naming it, we maybe probably should have spent a little bit more time naming it, but it just worked. Like sometimes you can name something in a little bit, and other times like I try to name a recurring feature on the site and it just doesn't work, and I just don't even bother naming it after the first weeks and just go with a regular headline. So I don't know at all. It's all relative, I guess.
Well, and I've listened to a couple episodes, and it's really it's good, straightforward college football talk. I mean, it's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we make some jokes and stuff, but obviously my audio skills are a problem, and that's something I'm having to get better at. Like, you've gotten to this point where you do these podcasts so often, so frequently, you kind of get it down to a science. I'm in week 4 just messing with knobs and levers and pressing buttons, and then when it's done and it doesn't sound good, I just apologize for it and tell people not to listen to it. So.
Well, and let's be honest, there are way too many options. If somebody really wanted to set the world on fire in terms of podcasting, they would release a single a piece of software with fewer options. This was my advice for Best Buy too, way back in the day. They had this like ginormous section in the back of the store with 347 different models of television, and I was like, people want you to be the filter.
It's like now Verizon's doing their like small, medium, big data plan. They've gotten it down to just like offering 3 things so that you can just point to one of them and say, that's the amount of data I want.
Yeah. Well, and I wish Best Buy should do the same thing. Say, all right, you want a 65-inch television? This is the best one. This is the budget option, and this is the middle option, and that's it. That's all we offer. They're all going to work. This one's going to probably work longer than this one. And just simplify it. I know what size TV I want, so now I could pay for the best one, or I could go for the budget option.
Craig, I feel like you have like tried to make tweaks to Best Buy like at least half a dozen times.
Yeah, I know. It's an ongoing thing. Well, I used to own some of the stock, and so I would watch it sync all the time, and I'd be like, can't these people figure it out? It's so so I redesigned their business 100 times. That's just what I do.
Just keep doing it.
I need start a blog. I need a different business reference. Let's talk about it. Another store or another business that needs to fix itself. All right, so let's actually talk about some current events, because we've got some Buckeyes stuff. It's kind of fun that the team closest to me geographically that I care about the most is actually, the most compelling, the reigning champions. But they're actually struggling through a time period. They're not good right now, which is so weird to say of a team this talented.
I just don't think that they know who they want to be yet. And that's okay. That's what the early season is for. And as long as you don't get tripped up, and even if you do get tripped up one time, it's not a huge deal, as we saw last year with them. They just have a lot of different options and a lot of different things that they could be, and they haven't figured it out yet. It's like playing an RPG and collecting all of the inventory, but eventually you're going to have to decide whether you want to be the fighter or the mage or whatever other option that you're going down, because then you're committed to it and then you can build up all of your skills and become an expert. They don't know if they want to be this home run hitting passing team, which they can be with Cardale, where he's a big bruiser. He throw the deep ball and kind of run the almost Tebow type offense that he could run, but with just a bigger arm. They don't know if they want to be more traditional Urban Meyer offense, where they can let JT Barrett pass and use his legs and do things in the pocket. And then what do you do with Zeke, who's, a terrific running back who probably to this point has really not been utilized effectively. And then you've got that Braxton Miller thing where it's like, oh, let's just run him Wildcat sometimes because he can still throw the ball and we have to get him his touches. There are too many mouths to feed and too many different things that they can do and can do well. But like, college kids are already ADD enough. The last thing they need is their head coach being ADD too.
Well, and it's like, it's in a lot of ways, people are like, well, oh, poor you with your embarrassment of riches. But it really is not. I mean, it's almost as big a problem as having no options.
Yeah, no, I would say that's the case too. I mean, that's that Les Miles thing. If you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Well, what happens if you have three quarterbacks and an elite running back? What do you do? And they'll get it right. Look, like Urban Meyer is one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in football, depending on who you talk to. He's a brilliant offensive mastermind. I think he knows he's got this time to work out the kinks. I just think he thought he would maybe have it figured out before week 4.
Well, how much of this is a hangover, BCS hangover for college football fans, where they think it's impossible for your team if they lose once, but that's not really true.
Also, is Ohio State going to lose until November? Like, they probably aren't, and they know that. Like, yeah, you're scared of that Northern Illinois game, but Northern Illinois wasn't taking that by the throat and grabbing it. Ohio State probably would have played differently if they really felt like there was a fire under them in that game.
Yeah, like if it was a playoff,
then it's different. Like an NCAA tournament game, it's different. But it wasn't that. It's a regular season game where you kind of always feel like when you're at home and you have the better players, things are going to be okay. It just looked bad and people want to freak out about it because it's September and they don't have anything else to talk about. But yeah. They won the game. You move on. A Hawaii game, like, they didn't cover the spread and the offense didn't look that good, but they won 38-0. Like, it wasn't the Auburn-Jacksonville State thing where then the next week you go out and get pummeled. It was there. It's a work in progress. Like, but we know what that work can be. It's just a matter of whether or not they do get tripped up before they figure it all out. And honestly, when's that going to happen? Like, are they going to get Western Michigan's probably if Western Michigan beats Ohio State, we have a completely different conversation. But like, are they going to lose to Indiana? Are they going to lose to Maryland or Penn State? Probably not. And by that time, they're probably going to be who they want to be. When you get into the middle of October, you're the team you're going to be the rest of the year. And if that team is a really confused, bipolar team that makes amazing plays and sometimes looks like they can't even pick up 3 yards, then we can reevaluate how we feel about Ohio State, because by that time we've stripped away all of our preseason predictions and thoughts of what a team should be. And we have enough data to say, okay, this is who they are. And that's the moving target that we'll get into.
It's really funny that we've all been through X number of football seasons, college and pro, in our lives, and we've seen the ups and downs of these, especially football, where it's week to week and you wait 7 days between games. We've seen how these scripts go, and yet we have to kind of remind ourselves that it's a long book, and chapter 2 is not necessarily how it's going to end. But I don't know. I think maybe I'm getting better at it, but we seem to do this every year.
We have to. It's how college football works. And it's wonderful and beautiful and crazy and completely inane, but that's it. And I don't want it to be different. I love when we make these preseason predictions and then one person says, well, preseason rankings don't matter. And then someone else says, well, why is my team ranked so low? It's great. I think it's because you have so much anticipation about the college football season. You have so long between when the season ends and when the season starts again. So you spend this entire time breaking down these rosters of kids, probably a quarter of whom have never even been on the football field before. That's the best part. Like, you're also banking on people that you've never seen, and these other players who also have never seen the field relative to whether or not they redshirted or they got very few snaps their freshman year. And it's all 18 to 22-year-olds too. And there's so much margin for error with those kids. It's amazing. And so you spend all this time talking about what a thing should be and how they're going to, even in the NFL where it's so regimented and they've got, fewer rosters. So you can only change your team so much. And you've got coaches and you've got things established. The Seahawks can still be 0-2. So in college football, of course, we're going to try to figure out what's going to happen, and we're going to be completely wrong. And then we're going to look up and be like, why the heck did we have Auburn ranked in the top 5 to begin the year?
Yeah. It's crazy. It's just, and you're right. That is why we love it. We do love the craziness.
Yeah. It's the only thing still keeping me hooked is just how insane this sport really is. You get that something like the Ole Miss touchdown where the snap's high, the dude has to corral it, then he's almost going to get destroyed, just kind of chucks it in the air, it bounces out of another guy's hands through 3 defenders' hands who were about to tackle that guy, and then dude who broke his leg last year comes back, sprints down the sidelines, and that's your signature play in the middle of September in Tuscaloosa, and then everyone says, okay, well, Alabama's done. They're done for the year. The sky's falling, fire Saban. That's why I love the sport. Because there's so much that can change in a moment, and it's so unpredictable, and it's got by far the best fans of any sport. And that's just how I feel because I spend so much time at these tailgates and on these college campuses, and people do the most ridiculous things, but they're also so kind. Most of them, you're going to have the lunatic fringe with pretty much anyone. But I wrote about those Virginia Tech fans. They treated Ohio State fans awesome. Everybody was passing moonshine around. They were letting Ohio State fans join their tailgates. So you had merged tailgates. We had a multi-blog tailgate where the key play was a Virginia Tech blog, and 11 Warriors with Ramsey was there. Everyone was just sitting around in a circle, eating pork and drinking moonshine and talking about football again because we were just happy to have it back in anticipation of the biggest game that everyone had talked about for months and months and months on Labor Day at night under the lights when one team wanted to get revenge on the other team because that team almost derailed their season before it could even start last year. And there was no malice at all. People were just happy to be spending time with someone else who had a shared interest, and you were among friends. And I really do love that about college football.
Well, and obviously college football fans are far different from politicians, but it's kind of like when they're done arguing on the news screen, there's no two people who have more in common than the far right senator and the far left senator, because they're both senators. Mm-hmm. And so college football fans, when you really boil it down, they have more in common with each other than they even do the players that play on their favorite team.
Yeah. Once you break it all down, it's okay, so who are we? Well, we're these sacks of flesh who root for this team of children playing a game where they don't get paid, where there's so many factors in play that are out of your control. And we all just really like the camaraderie of it and this shared experience that we have. And you can wear different colors and have different historical backgrounds and come at it from completely different, situations of like, what's your fanhood story? What's your origin story? But at the end of the day, you're rooting for something you have no control over, and you love this thing for whatever inexplicable reason. You love it, and yeah, you strip it all away, and everyone feels that same way. Like, if you take the rivalries out of it, and you take the hatred, and you take the 10 fans per school that make everybody look bad, people just want to have fun on their Saturday and hope that their team wins. And there's something, if there's so much that's unpure about sports, and especially about collegiate athletics, at least that's the part of it that's still distilled down and is really, really beautiful.
I'm going to leave it right there. We could talk about more current events or whatever else, but we don't need to. We'll do it again sometime. While we were talking, your Chvrches feature went up. It's on Uproxx Music. It's called Clear Eyes: How Chvrches Learned to Ignore the Hype and Haters for their big second album. And it's all I could do to keep myself from reading it while you were talking. So I'm just gonna end it. We did it. I think this was really good.
Thanks again. I love doing this, Greg.
Yeah, it's always fun. I feel like we get in depth on whatever it is we're talking about, which is a lot of fun, rather than, hey, what's your top 5 plays of the NFL season and how much do you hate Johnny Manziel? Go.
Oh gosh, we didn't even mention Johnny, did we?
I know. I love it. I'm not even going to put him in the notes. All right, man. Thanks. Keep up the great work, and we'll do it again soon.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Till next time, everybody. It's been the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast.
Waiting for next year.